morning, Felena's.
California, there was a large Mexican population. And I grew up born in 1942, and it was a place called Montebello, and it was right next to East Los Angeles. And East Los Angeles in California was about 95%. We say Mexican again. We don't say Hispanic. We don't say, they're Mexican. And their family and ancestors have been there for 100, 150 years. And so right there, I was introduced to the Mexican culture, the Mexican food. And as for myself, I was a very finicky eater. I had a reputation for just meat and potatoes, no vegetables, no tomatoes or lettuce on a hamburger. It's just, I was really odd. I mean, a lot of people, you really have trouble eating different kinds of food. I said, yes, I do. I can't help it. And then living where we did there in Montebello, and then later Pico Rivera, which was a mixture of Anglos, people from the mid-Southwest, and then the Mexicans that lived there. And I was introduced to Mexican food when I was about 11 or 12. And it was made up starting with tacos. Everybody's heard of that. Then also taquitos, stands. Mainly, I haven't gone to a Mexican restaurant yet. But for some reason, I felt that Mexican food, ethnic food, I'm not supposed to like that, or any foreign food. And he said, I really liked it. There was something about it that was addicting. And so I started branching out, going to different, when I had a car finally, go to some of these stands. I still haven't gone to a Mexican restaurant. And then I had a good friend that I'd met in Whittier, California, which is near Pico Rivera on the east side. Now, she was Mexican. Rodriguez was her last name, I remember. And she invited me to, when I was about 14, to a taco fest at her home. And it was a place called Jimtown. But again, I had a taste of this Chinese or Mexican food, and I really liked this. And so by the time I was grown, I was already addicted to Mexican.
Right.
And so, after... what did I do? I went to university in California. Now I'm still in California, in Fullerton State, University and all of that, California. And what happened is that I was doing some substitute teaching when I was going to college. And then I got tired of going to school. I was a graduate student. And I ended up getting drafted into the American Army.
Oh, so
that was 1967.
67.
And what happened is that I'm drafted.
Okay.
I end up in Fort Lewis, Washington.
All right.
And then from Fort Lewis, Washington, now this is 1967. I went from Fort Lewis, Washington to a place in New Jersey called Fort Dix. And in Fort Dix, I found out that I was going to be shipped off to Vietnam. And no, I'm not a draft dodger. There's a lot of military history in my family. And so looks like I'm going to Vietnam. So I ended up in Vietnam it would be July of 1967. So I spent a year there in Vietnam. And I got back to California. I still had 6 months to serve, so I ended up in San Francisco for 6 months at one of the more famous, where the Presidio is. So that, and then when I got out of the army, there was a period there where I was with my brother, and he was 2 years older, and he had friends in Boston, and he said, "Why don't we fly to Boston and we'll go out on to Provincetown there in the New England states." I'd never been there; he had never been there, and I did have some free time after the army, and where I went back to substitute teaching and back in school, and we just happened to meet two French Canadian women, and we got to know them fairly well, and I ended up writing to one of them, and she came and visited me in California. And so we decided that why don't we just go up to Canada and live there for a while and see what happens. I'll get a job, mainly teaching or anything. And she said, fine. And then, yeah, that's what she wanted. So that's what landed me in Ottawa. I didn't have a.
That's there you go.
Yeah, it was just, you just don't expect it. I knew about Ottawa. I knew about Canada, obviously, but I didn't think I'd end up here for a while. And I thought I'd only stay up here for a year or so. And the kind of job I had was mainly substitute teaching. That's a lot of what I did before I went into the army. And I was I was a good substitute teacher because it mainly grades 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, because I was good at handling the bad classes. Some of the rougher classes that I would end up with, I could handle. I don't know if I could today if I was teaching, what I've heard, but I was good with the bad kids.
Okay.
The bad kids, I mean, they were disruptive, aggressive, not like a lot of young people are today.
Right.
But I did get a full-time job teaching finally.
Okay.
And again, I got the job because I could handle the bad kids. I was no longer a substitute. I was a regular teacher.
Where were you?
In Elmer.
Albertville.
Okay. In Elmer.
Okay.
And then from there, I was working for 5 years as a teacher. And my brother in California, he was kind of not sure what he'd had a couple of jobs and worked for the government for a little while. And he came up with the idea. He said, do they have any Mexican restaurants in Ottawa? And I said, no, I don't think there's any in Toronto.
What year was this when?
We're talking 1975, 76.
Okay. So there was no Mexican restaurants in Ottawa around 1970s, late 70s.
And the reason there wasn't, it was hard to get the ingredients. So if you went into a store back then, they did have tortillas, but they were canned tortillas. They had
canned.
Yeah, in a can kind of.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know.
Dry. And but there was no to open a restaurant, you would have to. It would be very difficult to get the supplies.
Right.
And so what happened is that a friend of ours, Eduardo Cardona, a Mexican friend, he and some of his, there were a few Mexicans in Ottawa, and they said, we're going to open up a tortilleria. And so I'm thinking now, a tortilleria, that's the first thing you need where you get fresh tortillas. And in the process, he'll probably order other supplies for his tortilla, where he had the tortilla set up and all of that. And so we started thinking, well, maybe we need to, we think we can get the supplies now. A lot of the supplies were coming up through Chicago. And we actually visited Chicago and went to some of the larger companies that were manufacturing Mexican food items. And they were starting to Toronto was starting to get Mexican restaurants. Ottawa had none. And so since I ate Mexican food, I didn't know how to really cook it. But what happened is that partner and I, we were coming back from, now we're talking 1976. And we're coming back from California where my parents still are. And I said, why don't we stop at the Mexican restaurant? Because in Arizona, there were Mexican restaurants.
Right.
And I said, why don't we go into one of these restaurants and see what happens? And so we go into this restaurant in Springerville, Arizona. And it just happens that an elderly gentleman was waiting on us. And it's obvious that he wasn't a typical server or anything like that. And so I felt like I could talk to him. I said, what's your background? He said, well, I'm a professor. My wife's in the kitchen. She's a professor. And we're on sabbatical. And what we're doing is operating this Mexican restaurant that we own. And we have a little Indian fellow a lot of Indians in Arizona, northern Arizona. And he's our cook. Or he's the one that line cook and all of that. My wife and I, it's our recipes and all. And he said, by the way, why don't you get up and go into the kitchen and talk to my wife? Might learn something. And so, yeah, sure. So I go in there, partner, we meet her. And this is a Mexican restaurant, kitchen now. This is interesting. Then she said, I have an idea for you. We have a red sauce here. But it doesn't have to be cooked. And I'll gladly give you the recipe. I said, sure. And that's what we're famous for now with our nachos, red sauce.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we learned a lot from them. Then we're still driving east on the old 66. So it's a 4-lane highway now. It's not a 2-lane highway like it was in the 20s and 30s. And we ended up in Columbia, Missouri. And we saw a Mexican restaurant. Now, I was thinking, now there's Mexican restaurants all over North America and Canada. Back then, they were mainly in the southwestern United States, which included California, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, of course, Oklahoma, maybe Missouri. But we saw this sign for a Mexican restaurant. So let's stop, go in there and see what we can find out. And the food was good.
It was good.
Better than I thought it would be, because Missouri, there's no Mexicans hardly here. Why would it be? I said, it's really good. I said, our server this time wasn't on sabbatical. It was just a young lady. And we said, is the owner of the restaurant here? And she said, yeah, he is. He owns some tortilla machines in Kansas City. And he's very successful, and we're just one of his restaurants, and he just happens to be here. He'll gladly talk to you. Sure enough, he came out and sat down with us. He was a Mexican fellow, and he was quite friendly, and we were talking, and I said, your food's really good, and I didn't expect to find a good Mexican restaurant in Missouri at that time. Of course, there would be now, but the chains hadn't come in yet. But we were talking, and he said, so you want to open a Mexican restaurant in Ottawa, Canada? That's interesting. And then he said, okay, let me give you some advice. And I said, well, what's that? He said, try and open near a university. Young people are willing to try new food. A lot of older people, more conservative, don't want to try something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And he said also, you want to get a restaurant. So the worst thing you can do is buy somebody's business, because that you have to pay for the goodwill of that and all of that. And what you want to do is find a restaurant that's basically gone belly up, and people have left. And so all you'd have to do is to step in there and get a lease, and you won't have to pay for a business for anybody in that. And so we found our first restaurant was Rose's Cantina. It was on Somerset near the University of Ottawa, Somerset and King Edward.
Okay.
And so in the meantime, before we got to where we opened the restaurant, we were doing a lot of research on Mexican food.
Okay.
We were inviting friends over, and we could be creative. I think we even knew a couple of Mexicans here in Ottawa. Well, the one that did the tortilla sheet. So we thought we were ready to open a restaurant, and we're quick learners, or I am. And now, in one thing that sets me apart, I'm very good at determining when I create a different item or whatever. I can tell you if somebody's going to like this the first time, or if it's going to be a taste you have to acquire. And see, a lot of ethnic food doesn't always do that well initially, because people that open these restaurants, not just Mexican, it could be Chinese, it could be Thai, it could be Indian, East Indian. And I said, a lot of people won't like it the first time. And I won't mention any restaurants here, obviously, but there are a couple of restaurants. I won't even tell you what time they were, but I tried them and I said, no. If this is an acquired taste, this is something that you've been eating since you were quite young, and you're probably addicted to it in your own way, but it's not going to go over the first time.
For anybody.
Anybody, no.
Right.
No. And I said, something about Mexican food. We were doing some cooking for our friends, and they said, this is really good. This is, wow. And they never had it before.
Right.
And I said, well, it's the spices. I said, probably the most famous spice when you're making Mexican food is of course, chili powder. And then there's cumin, which I didn't know at the time, but it's also common among Indian food, East Indian food, cumin. And it's addicting, and it's in chili con carne. And so some people are already familiar with that flavor, but I realized that by testing different food items, with friends and all of that, we could determine, what people like the most initially. And so we decided that when we're ready to open the restaurant, we have to have every item just the way we want it. And we've, again, introduced it to people that have never really had spicy food, or we introduce it to people that have never come close to eating Mexican food. Maybe they've heard of tacos and enchiladas and things like that.
Yeah, that's the thing too, right? Because I think a lot of people can get used to eating like Mexican food or South American food, because I feel like it's been commercialized in ways where you could see certain things. It's not authentic, but it would probably be like Nacho Tuesdays, or kind of like you see nachos in grocery stores or whatever you want. You make your own thing. And so people, I feel, got the idea. And then so when they eat Mexican food in restaurants, even though they don't eat it all regularly, they're kind of used to it. It's in the public eye for a very long time. And from what I can, in my opinion, I think people can get used to that eating.
Well, it's one thing that we focused on is we'd try different dishes and how people reacted. And you just brought up the word authentic a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Now, by authentic, that is the two-edged sword, because authentic might mean somebody's. A lot of the Mexican food served now in North America, it's to meet the palate of people living in North America, and but one thing we decided is that we could go one of two directions. We could come up with a recipe that's not that hot, that the average person, your grandmother, your aunt, they're going to like it the first time. We said, no, it's not going to be necessarily authentic, but it's the kind of Mexican food we like. And it does have more of a hotter than maybe what a franchise Mexican restaurant would do. And one thing you'd probably noticed over the years with all the chains that started opening up all over North America and Canada, the food's a little bland.
You mean like Taco Bell kind of thing? Like
I have a philosophy, and it's called bad Mexican food is better than no Mexican.
Mm.
And
What-
that, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What does that mean exactly?
Well,
Yeah.
even Taco Bell
Mhm.
Mexican food I enjoy. Not as
Right.
good as ours, but
Mhm.
it's somewhat bland. But it's tasty, and
Yeah.
so in that sense, but we wanted to set ourselves apart from the chains because they're trying to satisfy as many people as they can. I'm sure they sat around, some of the people that were running the restaurant chain, and well, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to, So what we decided to do with our first Mexican restaurant is that people will find it, maybe some people will find it too hot.
Mhm.
Maybe some people will find it, they're not familiar with food like this or the way it's done, but we felt that it's going to be mainly, well, in the end, it was California style Mexican food.
Is this what this restaurant is?
Yeah.
California?
Yeah, California. Like, there's to digress for a second, there's 4 states in America that historically over the last 50, 75 years, it was famous for Mexican food, was Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And I'd had some Mexican food in Texas, New Mexico, and it was different than California style. But that's where Texas is different than California.
I see it.
That, like, when you deal with Mexican food in Texas, there's more of a combination between more barbecue, more style of cooking, and so when people say, "Oh, you're from the States, so is this Tex-Mex?" It's like, no, this is California style. It's different.
So, what would you say about your cuisine if you could say the type of cuisine you have in this restaurant? That is California, like you said, Mexican kind of. Yeah, it's the sauces.
It's the sauce.
Okay.
See, you go to Texas, and there's not as much sauce on and the sauces are what set our food here, apart from, let's say, Tex-Mex, maybe even Mexicans, or New Mexico has really good Mexican food, but it's a little different than what Texas has and then what California has. And I grew up eating Sonoran style Mexican food, which is predominant in Southern California. And a lot of it has to do with the sauces.
What is your favorite dish here that you would recommend to anybody first time coming to?
Well, everybody likes our tacos. Everybody likes our enchiladas.
Okay.
Then we just introduced 2 new items, which are it was a little harder for us to make these 2 items. It's tamales and chili rellenos. And I had tamales growing up.
Yeah.
And I started to eat chili rellenos when I was an adult. And we had somebody working with us from Mexico in the 80s and 90s, Tila Lopez. It's a long story, and we won't go into that, how she ended up here. I've digressed enough as it is. And she helped us learn how to cook chili rellenos.
Okay.
And we actually have people now calling us. It's a food item that you have to make from scratch, and it runs out pretty quickly. And they'll ask, "Do you have any chili rellenos tonight?" Yeah, we do. Okay, we'll be there. And then the tamales, the same thing.
I feel like your restaurant has definitely been here for a very long time. How long did you, like, what year did you open Felena's?
1992.
19. Wow. And during your times here, obviously there's been ups and downs. I know a lot of restaurants were going through a rough time during the pandemic. How did you guys go through that? How did that look like for you?
Well, one advantage we have is that for an ethnic food, it's food that enough items on the menu that would satisfy young people.
Mhm.
So we do very well with the families.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things in relation to franchises. We copy the way they treat people and the way they, like we have a kids menu and things like that. And that's helped us. And also our food is addicting.
So that helped you during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also we're one of the few restaurants I know in the city where the owner's on the premises and
Okay.
and the servers are of all ages,
Right.
50. So people like that. And I think we've built up a regular clientele, and that's helped us get through the pandemic. And it didn't affect our business. It only, we were affected when we couldn't open. But what they did for us, and we really appreciated the government, is that they helped us with our rent. It was, we didn't have to pay for it. Like half our rent was paid for. Also, they labor costs, they cut that in half. And so, it didn't affect us that much, to the extent that the fact that we had to change our hours. Sometimes we had to close for a while and things like that. It didn't put as much pressure on us as maybe some other restaurants were struggling maybe anyway.
So what is this?
This is from the yearbook of my high school. This is 1959 from look, the delicious tacos that Bob Serrano and Gary LaRue, I knew both those fellows, are about to consume are from Charlie's Taco Stand, Whittier Boulevard, Pico Rivera, California.
Wow.
And look at the prices.
What is that? 25 cents, 30
For a
cents?
taco.
Oh, wow.
Taquitos, hamburgers, they throw in the hamburgers, chili dogs, burritos. Oh, they have good burritos. Yeah.
Amazing.
Green or red chili. Yeah. That's where I first had Mexican food.
And that was in Oklahoma. Was that Oklahoma or?
No,
that's California.
Pico
Yes.
Rivera, California.
Yeah, California. Right. Yeah.
This Whittier Boulevard goes right through the heart of, they call it, now I'm having a senior moment. It's the main highway leading from downtown Los Angeles, and they call it East LA. And Whittier Boulevard, and that's about 7 or 8 miles from where I went to high school.
Wow.
So it's all Mexican now.
Wow. And so, do you feel happy about your legacy, and do you feel happy about that? Do you feel happy that you've come so far and you have now an established business? You're now 82 years old.
Well, I was very nervous and insecure when we first started. I didn't, I was worried that people that knew more about restaurants than I did would be attracted, and they did. They to what we were doing. And what happened is that the more I worked in the restaurant, and we had a franchise company set up. Then I realized what I had to offer, and that I'm very good at determining what food people are going to like and what food people, Mexican food they maybe won't like. And I feel that I've been good with the staff and attract the right people, like the fellow you just talked to.
Peter.
Peter has worked for me for 45 years. And his younger brother has worked for me for 43 years.
43.
And then the 2 or 3 Mexican ladies that have helped me over the years come through my restaurants and now are getting older, they're not involved anymore. They feel comfortable. They like working. And that makes a big difference. Just think how much he's learned over the last 40 years.
Yeah. And the people in the Glebe area know you as well, right? So
You're well known. You're a staple of in the glebe now in this area.